You know, there is something rather curious that happens when a person begins to wake up spiritually and then remains single, but single in a deeper sense. You find yourself walking through life without a romantic contract that tells you who you are, where you should be, and how you should feel. At first, this can feel like a failure. Everyone around you seems to be pairing up, posting pictures, building families, building stories. And you sit there with your own company on a Friday night, wondering if something went terribly wrong with you. Yet, if you watch closely, something else is happening in that space that looks like emptiness. While others are busy adjusting themselves to fit inside a relationship structure, you begin to discover who you are without that structure. And this simple difference, this quiet absence of a partner to orbit around, can make you grow at a pace that surprises even you. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that the more awake you become, the harder it is to fit inside the usual romantic scripts? You look at the common relationship patterns and you can see the trades that are being made. I will ignore this part of my soul if you ignore that part of yours. I will pretend you are my savior if you pretend I am yours. I will call my fear of abandonment love, and you will call your need for control care. Most people enter this dance without ever questioning it. But when you wake up, you start to see the strings. You see how much of what we call romance is actually mutual hypnosis. Two egos trying to secure themselves against the vast uncertainty of existence. And if you refuse to play that game blindly, you often end up single. Now, from the outside, this looks like a lack. People say, you are too picky, you work too much on yourself, you are afraid of intimacy, you should settle down. They imagine that if you simply lowered your standards or stopped thinking so much, love would flow into your life like water into a container. What they miss is that the very consciousness that makes you see through illusions also makes it extremely painful to pretend. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee the patterns you have seen. So when you stay single in this awakened way, it is rarely because you do not desire connection. It is because you cannot pay the price of losing yourself again just to avoid being alone. And this is where the outgrowing begins. When two people are in a conventional relationship, their growth is often limited by the implicit contract of not changing too much. I will not grow in a way that threatens your story about me if you do not grow in a way that threatens my story about you. They settle into a stable pattern, like two stones that have learned how to lean against each other. Remove the pattern, and both feel lost. But you, remaining single, have no such agreement holding you in place. There is no one to reassure by staying the same. There is no one to reassure you that you are still the person you were last year. You are free to fall apart and rearrange yourself as many times as the truth requires. You might say, but is that not lonely? Of course it is. At times it feels like walking through a forest at night with no path and no hand to hold. The old signposts of identity disappear. You are not defined by being someone's partner, someone's wife, someone's husband, someone's great love story. You are just this strange, conscious presence moving through time, trying to understand what it means to be alive. The loneliness that comes with this can be brutal, yet see what it does to you. When you cannot escape yourself through another person, you are forced to meet yourself. You sit with your own mind on quiet evenings. You face the echoes of past relationships. You feel the ache of unmet needs from childhood. There is no affectionate distraction to smooth out the sharp edges. So you begin to do something that many people never do in their entire lives. You turn toward your pain instead of away from it. You start asking uncomfortable questions. Why do I feel unworthy when I am not chosen? Why do I panic at the thought of being alone forever? Why do I cling so fiercely? When someone gives me a little attention, you trace the threads back into your history, into your conditioning, into the way you were taught to see love, and in doing so, you grow. I once knew a woman who spent years going from relationship to relationship, never spending more than a few weeks alone. She said she was afraid of silence, that if she stopped, she would fall into some inner abyss. One day, after a painful breakup, she decided to stay single until she felt whole enough not to treat the next person as medicine. The first year was agony. She felt abandoned, unwanted, invisible. But rather than numbing that pain with another romantic story, she sat with it. She cried through old memories. She realized that what she called love was often a plea to be rescued from herself. In those years alone, she outgrew a lifetime of patterns. When she finally felt ready to relate again, she could no longer tolerate the half-awake dance. She loved more gently, more honestly, but she would not trade her soul for company. Many thought she had become cold. In truth, she had become whole. This is one of the reasons spiritually awake single people outgrow those around them. Without someone to constantly reflect back a comfortable identity, you do not have the luxury of staying the same. You become your own mirror, your own therapist, your own philosopher. You experiment with solitude. You discover that you can cook dinner for one and actually taste the food rather than swallowing loneliness with every bite. You learn to walk through a city alone on a weekend and observe couples and families without automatically turning it into a story of your personal failure. You find small, quiet joys that depend on no one else. A certain kind of song in your headphones, the light at sunset on the wall, the feeling of your own breath when you finally relax. Now, you may think, yes, but is that growth not possible inside a relationship too? It can be, and sometimes it is. There are rare relationships where both people are truly committed to waking up, and they allow each other to change without panic. Yet these are exceptions rather than the rule. Especially in a culture that treats relationship as a refuge from existential anxiety, rather than a field where truth can blossom. For many, being single removes the main excuse for not doing the inner work. You cannot blame your partner for your unhappiness when you have no partner. You cannot distract yourself with constant drama. You sit with the raw fact that the noise in your head follows you everywhere, and that if you want peace, you will have to look deeper than the next match or the next date. So you meditate, you read, you think. You stare at the ceiling and wonder what this whole thing is. You explore spiritual teachings not as entertainment, but as oxygen. And life responds to this sincerity. It starts to strip away your illusions faster than you can replace them. While others are learning how to negotiate who takes the trash out, you are negotiating with the universe itself about who you think you are. While others are busy maintaining a shared story about where the relationship is going, you are watching the very idea of future dissolve into this strange, timeless presence that you keep finding underneath every experience. This does not make you better than anyone, but it does make you different. You start to see through social games more easily. You watch your friends agonize over text messages, over what he meant by this, what she meant by that, and you can see the pattern behind the words. Two egos in fear, trying to secure themselves with clever sentences. You feel compassion because you have been there, but you no longer want to live there, and so the distance between you and the people around you grows. In many groups, your singleness becomes a problem others want to solve. Family members ask when you will bring someone home, as if your life is a puzzle missing the central piece. Friends try to set you up with people who look good on paper. They say they just want to see you happy, but often what they really want is to see you normal. Your very existence outside the pattern makes them uncomfortable. If you can be content without a partner, what does that say about their dependence on one? So they project concern, sometimes even pity, onto you, while you are quietly expanding in ways they do not see. This is another way you outgrow them. You learn to be misunderstood without bending yourself to be understood. You learn to hold your own inner knowing even when the outside world reads your solitude as failure. That is a powerful spiritual muscle. You stop chasing validation in the form of romantic attention. Instead, you begin to value alignment with your own truth above almost anything else. You realize that entering a relationship just to prove that you can is a subtle form of self-betrayal. Better an honest solitude than a connection built on fear. Underneath all of this, something even more radical begins to happen. The longer you stay awake and single, the more your idea of love transforms. At first you may feel that love is missing from your life because there is no special person to give it a shape. But as you keep walking, you notice that tenderness appears in unexpected places. In the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. In the way you treat a stranger at the grocery store. In the way you sit with a friend who is falling apart, offering presents rather than solutions. You start to sense that love is not a scarce resource to be hunted, captured, and kept in one person. It is a quality of attention, a way of seeing. It is what happens when the separation between you and the rest of life softens, even a little. From this perspective, remaining single is not the absence of love. It is a training ground where you learn to love without using anyone as a shield against emptiness. And once you have tasted that, many ordinary relationships feel impossibly small. Not because the people in them are bad or foolish, but because the frame is too narrow for the love you have discovered. You cannot fit the ocean back into a glass. Spiritually, this is the essence of outgrowing people. You begin the journey thinking you need someone to complete you. As you stay single and awake, you gradually discover that you are not a fragment waiting for another fragment. You are a wave that had forgotten its ocean nature. You realize that the ache you tried to solve through romance was ultimately a longing for reunion with the whole. When this insight sinks from the head into the heart, something quiet and astonishing occurs. You may still desire partnership, but no longer as a rescue operation. You no longer ask another human being to save you from your own being. And when you stop making that demand, many of the potential relationships around you lose their appeal. They are not wrong, they are just built on an older version of you. One that needed constant reassurance, one that was willing to trade freedom for familiarity. You have moved beyond that stage. So you look around and it seems like you have outgrown almost everyone. Friends, ex-lovers, sometimes even your own family, who cannot understand why you would choose to walk this path that appears so empty from the outside. Yet on the inside, you know this path has given you something priceless. It has given you yourself. Of course, there is a danger here, a very subtle one. The ego can take all this and spin a new story. I am more evolved because I am single and spiritual. I am beyond ordinary human needs. That is just another costume, another role in the great play. The moment you start using your solitude as a badge of superiority, you fall back into the same old game on a different level. So a part of your growth as an awake single person is also to stay humble, to see that those in conventional relationships are not asleep by definition, and that you are not awake just because you are alone. The real difference lies not in your relationship status, but in the quality of awareness you bring to whatever status you are in. Still, it is fair to say that singleness removes many distractions from the path. It exposes you more nakedly to yourself. It confronts you with questions that a busy shared life can easily cover for decades. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly value when no one is there to reward or punish me? How do I treat my own heart when it is just me and the silence of the room? These questions shape you in ways that others might not understand from the outside. In time, your solitude becomes less like a prison and more like a monastery without walls. Your home, your walks, your simple routines, all become spaces where you meet the mystery directly. You begin to sense that you are never really alone because the very consciousness that is aware of your aloneness is vast and shared. It is the same awareness that looks out from every pair of eyes, that hears the same rain, that feels the same sun. You are alone as a person, but you are not lonely as presence. And this is perhaps the greatest outgrowing of all. The world tells you that to avoid loneliness, you must fill your life with people with partnership, with constant stimulation. Your journey shows you that the antidote to loneliness is not people, but intimacy with reality. When you have that, you can move in and out of relationships without losing yourself. You can love deeply without clinging. You can remain single without shame, and you can enter partnership without desperation. So if you find yourself spiritually awake, single, and feeling as if you are outgrowing everyone around you, understand what is really happening. Life is stretching you. It is asking you to become larger than the roles you were offered. It is teaching you a love that is not driven by fear. This stage may not last forever. One day you may meet another soul who has walked a similar path, and then your solitude will become a different kind of togetherness. Or maybe you will continue walking mostly alone, touching many lives lightly without ever signing your freedom away. In both cases, the essential thing is the same. Do not shrink yourself to fit into rooms you have outgrown. Do not betray what you have seen just to look normal. Let your singleness be what it wants to be, a fertile silence where your deepest self can unfold. And trust that those who are meant to meet you on this wider ground will find you there, not because you chased them, but because you were finally willing to stand as you are, whole, awake, and not afraid of your own company.